All right, you good to go?
Yep, ready.
All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm back, second podcast of the day. But as I talked about in the 9x9, it's March Madness, so you know it can't stop. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Mr. Kyle Donnan. He's the voice of UFV Volleyball. He coaches club for Seaside down in British Columbia, and he's also the man who runs Off the Hands Volleyball on Instagram. And he was also the voice of the CCAA Women's National Championships this past weekend at VIU. So, Kyle, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks, man. I'm slowly getting my voice back. It was a busy weekend, but it was a lot of fun. It was VIU put on a great event. Oddly enough, it wasn't the first time I got to do it. I actually got to be there for the event when they ran it back in 2012 as well. So
Wow.
it was kind of a cool full circle thing to be back there like 10 years later and to do it again.
Okay, great. Well, you were at the women's event out in Vancouver Island. I was at the men's event in Humber. So between the two of us, I think we're going to be able to break down quite a bit of the CCAA National Championships, and then we're going to talk about a little uSports as well, because in just a couple days' time, we're going to be kicking off the uSports Men's and Women's National Championships. The men's going down at McMaster University. The Birds Gymnasium is going to be bumping. And then one of the best places to watch a volleyball game is where the women's championships will be held at War Memorial Gymnasium at the University of British Columbia. So let's start us off with the CCAA Women's National Championships. First and foremost, a big shout out to the Lakeland Rustlers for taking home the crown. They took down Camosun in the finals, with the Humber Hawks taking out the bronze medal. So, Kyle, you were on the broadcast. Break down this event a little bit for us. Do we want to start at the quarterfinals, or do we just want to go a little bit overall?
I think we can go a little bit overall, but I think we got to start with the game of the tournament really happened in the second match. Oddly enough,
Okay.
it was Augustana versus the Edouard Montpetit, the Lynx. They played a match where Augustana won the first two sets, and then the Lynx came back, won the next two, and believe it or not, the fifth set went to 24-22. It was unreal. Like, the atmosphere was getting crazy as well, because the VIU match was supposed to be afterwards. So the gym was slowly filling in for the home team, but also they were all taking in the end of what was a pretty epic match between two teams that it was kind of a story of like three different matches all in one, because Augustana dominated the first two, the Lynx dominated the next two, and then it was literally back and forth the whole rest of the way. And I think the Augustana coach mentioned that was the first time they had won a national championship game, so it was a big deal for their school to get a victory like that. Um, and then, I mean, that was the talk of the first day, other than the fact that, seeing Humber upset VIU, or at least, for the hometown fans, that was kind of the upset. Unfortunately, VIU did not play great, and Humber played really well. So it was a kind of a mismatched, quarter between those two teams. But
Well, I mean, VIU was one of the top ranked teams all throughout the season the CCAA, and I mean, it's weird
yeah,
because it was kind of the trio at the top was always a version of VIU, Lakeland, and Humber.
yeah,
VIU upset, maybe as some would call it, in the Pac West Finals by Camosun, and then all three of them ended up in the same pool. And I know, I was at Humber. Humber was playing Saint Anne in their match as the women were playing, and I know that was a massive win for that Humber team against what many people viewed as you're right, probably the favorite, with a former uSports stars on that team, but seems they kind of crumbled just at the worst moment. Did VIU?
they really did. Unfortunately, their coach would agree with me, and we had many conversations about it. They couldn't serve. They served quite poorly in that match in particular, and it just unfortunately they didn't have the hometown feel and extra energy they might have needed in those matches. But at the same time, you can credit Humber. They played really well in that quarterfinal match. And oddly enough, moving into the next day, Humber just didn't play as well against Lakeland. Even though Lakeland played very well, Humber didn't play great, I didn't find. It was kind of a story of two different days for them. And then with the final day, Humber kind of responded and played very well against VIU on the last day to win the bronze. So, they were able to bounce back, even though they didn't have a great semifinal. I think they would have liked a better shot at Lakeland, but again, in that semifinal, Lakeland was also pretty dominant too. After I think they won the first set, dropped the second, and then they were solid in the next two to take it. So
yeah, I was actually been coaching with a couple of the Humber girls the past couple of days at a March break camp, and they were just telling me that Lakeland was just so solid and they didn't make any errors. They just played solid volleyball all weekend, and they were almost proud that they were the only team to have taken a set off the Rustlers all weekend, but they were also a little upset. They also felt like, maybe there was a little bit left on the table there, and for anyone knows the situation around that Humber Hawks team, it would have been a meaningful year of all years. I mean, that's a team that's been consistently at the national championships. I can't remember how many OCAAs they've won in a row. But, with head coach Chris Wilkins losing his wife suddenly earlier in the season, it would have been a very emotional win for them, and unfortunately they couldn't get it done. And I mean, we saw pictures of his emotion on the bench after the match, so they felt like there was a little bit left on the table, but at the same time they're like, what, like Lakeland was just a really good team, and they were definitely the best team in the country.
Absolutely. I had a chance to listen to your podcast beforehand, so I heard your story about Chris as well, and you could definitely tell. I got a chance to interview him after each of the games that he had wins in as well. And he was pretty. He felt pretty fortunate for the opportunity to have a chance at a medal again, and to be able to grab it was pretty spectacular. And I don't think he had a voice every time I got to talk to him too. His voice was gone. He he exerted a lot of energy into the weekend that he had for his team. So it was a well deserved bronze medal. They played incredibly well in that bronze medal match. So,
and I mean, to beat VIU twice like that, it's really tough. I mean, hell, we saw it in the uSports men's basketball championships this past weekend with Ottawa falling to Carleton in the semifinals despite having beat them in the OUA finals. And it's funny because I was just talking to some people, and it kind of reminded me it's really tough to beat a team twice in a season, and it's even tougher to beat a team twice in a tournament. How many times we see a team lose in pool play to another team and then beat them in a medal match later on. So big kudos to Chris Wilkins and the rest of that Humber team for picking up that bronze medal with two big wins over the host VIU team.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pretty incredible performance. I think even when I talked to Shane too, it was kind of the same thing. Like kudos to them. They played very well against VIU, and it seemed like they had their number that weekend. Even though I thought VIU had a better response in the second matchup of the bronze, but at the end of it all, they just, Humber just kind of had their number, and it appeared that way in the final too. The final was not as close as I think everybody expected it to be. Oddly enough, in the opening set, Lakeland was down 13-9 or 14-9, and their coach called a timeout. And I think after a stretch of like 5 or 6 points, it was tied.
Oh, wow.
So they bounced back and responded really well to their coach and to what they needed to do after a slow start. And then it was like off to the races, like Camosun just couldn't really catch up to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I heard as well. And it, I don't think there's any question about that. Lakeland was the best team in the CCAA this year. Who won the MVP? Was that Jenna Lang?
She was a first team All-Star. Janae Varga, their left side was MVP. She was honestly the most stable. She was their best passer. She was their best offensive weapon at times, but I said this to their coach after too, and I made a couple posts to some of their players about it, but their whole team was just, in that final in particular, top to bottom, everybody contributed in that final game. Like I think the first swing that Lana Matthews had on the left side, she crushed it down the line, and like the gym almost went silent to the point where it was just like, oh, they got her too. Like they had so many weapons that they went to in that match where different players were having success. And if I almost felt a little bit bad for Camosun just because they didn't play well. They didn't have a great match, and they have the weapons to have shown better too. And like you said about Humber, I think they left a little bit on the table that they would have loved to have performed a little bit better. But at the same time, you got to credit Lakeland for how well they performed as well.
Answering to Jackson in the chat, yes, I do believe Varga is related to Skylar Varga from formerly of the Saskatchewan Huskies, now playing down for Long Beach, although he is injured. Is it his sister, cousin? I believe it's his sister.
I'm not sure. It might be his sister. If it is, I think it's an older sister though.
Yeah, I saw him posting about it throughout the weekend.
I did too.
Yeah. So just to round out the first team All-Stars from this championship, Jenna Lang from Lakeland, Erica Bolink from Camosun, Karina McNeese of Camosun, Alex LaChapelle of Humber, Stephanie Armstrong of Humber, and then finally Jave Litvinenko. Help me out here, Litvinenko there of Humber, of course. The Ukrainian hammer. This is an athlete. I'm pretty sure she's played like Champions League matches. Played at TRU before finishing up here at VIU, and many were expecting her and the VIU Mariners to pick up another national championship, but it was all Lakeland in this one. Second team had Kaylee Lueck of Lakeland, Hannah May of Camosun, Cassidy Kitchen of VIU, Shea Boys of Augustana, Sarah Diedrich of Augustana, and finally Sophie Deschanel of Edouard Montpetit. All right. Do you think like the player of the tournament was appropriate to go to Varga?
Absolutely. At the same time though, like I said, I think it could have been anybody, but you watch that final point, and that was kind of an example of what she did for that team. She passed a perfect ball on a very good serve, arguably the best server in the tournament in Bolink, and she got up right after, set her, didn't even second guess who she was going to, put it to her, gave her room, and she like crushed it cross court to win the match. So I think that was kind of an example of what she brought. She did a lot more than just that, but that was kind of the icing on the cake for her.
Yeah, awesome. Who was it? VIU that won last year?
Yes,
with the women's side, like they've won. What was it? 4 in a row now?
It had been 4 in a row. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So this was an attempt for 5, which, from what I understood, had never actually been done before either. So.
Oh wow! On the brink of history to lose it at home like that must be heartbreaking. That's I feel for VIU fans and those VIU players, because that would have been something special. I do have a penchant for history, and whenever there's history, a chance to be made, I kind of want it to happen. But hey, sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
That's right.
And anything else to talk about for the women's championship there?
No, other than just, I think it was very well run. It was, there was a lot of excitement in that gym, even though, like you said already, the host team didn't end up getting to where they wanted to. But overall, from top to bottom, from day one to the end, it was great. It was very well run, and the fan support was pretty amazing.
Awesome. Where's it going next year for women's nationals?
I think it was Red Deer.
Oh, okay.
Or in Red Deer. I don't think it was Red Deer College. I can't remember the other school that it was, but
I didn't even know that Red Deer had 2 colleges. Interesting.
Let me see if I can find what that is. But maybe it is that it's just Red Deer.
All right.
Yeah, it's in the Alberta area. I know that.
All right, fair enough. I don't even know where the men's championships. I know they said it. Actually, no, I do know it's at Camosun next year, because I know the VIU coaches were telling me that they wanted to get it because all of the other schools in the Pac West had hosted recently. Right. So it's going to be headed to the West Coast out in Camosun. So both CCAA national championships out there next year. Jumping over to the men's, where I was all weekend. It's kind of the same story in a way when I look at how Camosun played. I talked to Calvin Ma after their semifinal, and he told me that they hadn't played their best volleyball yet. And the best volleyball that they had played was at the Pac West Championships, and they just kind of motored through that tournament. But first set of the tournament, they actually lost to the 8th seeded Providence Pilots of Manitoba. And I mean, I do have to give big kudos to that Providence Pilots team. I mean, the Manitoba Collegiate Athletic Association this is only the second time at nationals, right? So they're still new to all of this. And this was the first set that they ever won, and they did it against the defending champs and the eventual winners. So big kudos to them. I was impressed by them. They came out strong. They came out aggressive, playing good defense, but eventually their passing just let them down, and Camosun just overwhelmed them with their overall skill. And to me, that was kind of the story of the entire tournament. Camosun's overall skill would just overwhelm teams, and they were so steady with how they played. We saw it once again in the semifinals. They played Fanshawe. Fanshawe, I don't know what happened to Briarcrest in that first match, but I was kind of looking at Briarcrest and being like, how the hell did they even make it here? Luckily, they redeemed themselves in the bronze medal match, but I know they upset Red Deer pretty heavily in the ACAC finals, but they did not look good. Funnily enough, I was talking to Pat Johnson of Fanshawe before the game, and he goes, we like this matchup. We're a team that does really, really well against a setup that they have one really strong guy, and that's essentially what Briarcrest was. But you saw, especially in the bronze medal match, that it was very much a team effort from all of them. Did you get a chance at all to watch any either Camosun or VIU matches this year in the CCAA?
A little bit, and the one thing I'll say about Camosun in particular, and this is just the story of them, and I coached 5 years at UFE when it was in Pac West, and Camosun was always known for what you just said, which is they were kind of up and down throughout the years, always in the mix of like the top 1, 2, or 3 spot. And then they would always find a way to play their best when it mattered the most. They were constantly winning Pac West championships. At one point, I think it was 3 or 4, maybe even 5 in a row. And I'm not that surprised to hear their coach say, well, this is playing our best now. And that's why it showed that they won and were as dominant as they were, because they have been known to peak at the absolute right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's exactly what they did. Funnily, you say that the best game of the tournament was on day one, because it's the same thing at the men's tournament. It was VIU against Sherbrooke. VIU, man, they've got a couple of guys who can really hit the snot out of the ball. They went up 2-0 on Sherbrooke. They came back in the first set. They were rolling. They had the lead in the third, and they just let it slip from them. They had the lead in the fourth, and they let it slip from them. They had a sizable lead in the fifth, and let it slip from them. And I mean, you have to give a ton of credit to that Sherbrooke Volontaire team. I think Marc-Antoine Durocher was fantastic on the right side. And in general, they were just a team that didn't give up. They were equally the best serving team in the tournament and the worst serving team at the tournament. The sets that they won, they were the best serving team by far. And the sets that they lost, they were the worst serving team, either by errors or just hitting straight aces. So, you know what? I did eventually say that, during that game, I said, I wouldn't be surprised whoever loses this match wins the bronze. And I was really close on that. VIU did make it to the bronze medal match, but lost out to Briarcrest. I talked about Fanshawe upsetting Briarcrest in that first round match. They won the first with about an 8-point comeback, I was told. I missed it because of traffic. I was pissed about that. It took me over 2 hours to get to the Humber gym. Without traffic, it takes me 25 minutes. It took me over 2 hours in traffic. It was it was terrible. But they lost their P2 to an ankle sprain in the second set. Beta came under the net, blew out his ankle, and then it was just all Camosun from there. And they just dominate. I'm not entirely sure if Fanshawe would have beat Camosun with that other team, because they were losing that second set, and you could tell that Camosun was starting to get into their rhythm. But there is always that what if. Humber just overwhelmed Sherbrooke in the semifinals. Especially in the third and fourth, they really turned it up. I do think that it was probably the two best teams in the country in that final match, but at the end of the day, Camosun it was a packed house. Everyone wanted to see Humber win their first championship in a decade at home. But Camosun did such a good job at taking the crowd and the team out of it right from the early get-go. Big ups to that entire team. Lucas Mafia was the MVP of the tournament, and I think that was very well deserved. He ran that offense so well. Was super impressed by Beta on the left side. Dale McDonald was also really good in the middle, despite me posting. I don't know if you saw the clip that I posted of him just booting that over bump.
I did.
Like a million yards out of bounds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but big shout out to Camosun. I think, it's so great for Calvin Ma to have gotten it done like that, especially in his first year after taking over from Charles.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing from what I've heard you talk about with the tournament, and you can express a little more on the guys' side too, but in general for just guys and the girls' side, it was a serve and pass game from like the very, very beginning. And it's funny how like as a coach and as a player, you talk about serve pass as being so important. And then that's literally the one thing that broke down or was the saving grace for every single team this weekend. I felt like, going back to the women's side, Lakeland was by far the best serve pass team, and that's why they won.
Yep.
And I'm, based on what I saw from Camosun too, I'm not surprised given the, the experience in their lineup that they would have been that. So,
yeah, I don't know if they were the best serving team. They were a very strong serving team, but I think Sherbrooke and Humber were maybe better serving teams than they were. However, their passing was immaculate. Mafia ran the offense great. When you have that good of passing and you have 5 offensive weapons the way they did, they just overwhelmed teams with their skill. And as I said, I think they were the most skilled teams there, the most skilled team there, and it definitely showed in the result of a championship. All right, Kyle, I know you got to coach club soon, so we're going to move on really quickly now to uSports. You were the commentator for the UFV Cascades this year, so you got to see a few of these teams. Let's start on the men's side. Alberta with the number 1 seed, Trinity with the number 3 seed, and then Saskatchewan with the number 7 seed. First and foremost, are you surprised that Saskatchewan was able to take down both UBC in the quarters and then Calgary in the bronze medal to get this bid into nationals?
You know what? Honestly, I thought the Sask UBC matchup, I remember talking to Coach Hawkins before because we're close, and I said that's going to be a heck of a battle. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't surprised to see them win. I was impressed by how close it was, though. Like, it was just, that was a battle of a playoff series, and it really could have gone either way. So I mean, it was tough to see UBC lose, given that I'm a BC boy, but at the same time, like, it was very well deserved for Sask to get that win. And, for them to take down Calgary wasn't as much of a surprise, given that they had home court advantage, which I think was a significant advantage for them. It was a bit of a surprise to see Calgary knock off Mount Royal. That was the surprise of 100%. Canada West playoffs on the men's side. That really shook everything up, and, created an opportunity for Sask, and they took advantage of it. So, and now they get to play in arguably what should be one of the most exciting matches of the tournament with the crowd that's going to be there, the home court team. Like, those are the kinds of games you look forward to playing in. I got a chance to be a part of one of those when my team went to Laval back in like 2007 or 2008.
That's not
and we
an easy place to play.
We played Laval. We played Laval in the quarters and won. So I know what that's like, whether you're a spectator or like in the game. It's an amazing experience. So I think that's going to be one of the more exciting first round matchups.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I was also torn because I also have a relationship with Coach Hawkins. Matt Kruger, one of the assistant coaches, is my boy. I really like that UBC team as a whole, but same thing. With Sean McKay. Sean McKay is a good old Ontario boy. He and I spent a few summers coaching together on the beach, some beach camps. I had just done a podcast with Dylan Mortensen. I really like that makeup of that Sask team. They're one of the few teams to have beaten Alberta. They beat them in the first match of the season this year as well. So, just shows to me the depth of the Canada West. I really, truly think, and I mean, this is going to be heresy coming from an Ontario boy over here, but I think we should have 4. Now that there's only 3 conferences, I think it should just be, 1 host, 3 Canada West teams, 2 OUA teams, and two RSEQ teams. Because it's really too bad that Calgary got to beat the number 2 team in the country and didn't get a chance, or had MRU won it, that they may not have been there at all. But I'm really excited to be able to see this Sask team play in person. And you're right, that McMaster versus Saskatchewan matchup on day one is going to be unreal. Sask needs to be getting ready for a hostile environment. It's St. Patty's Day 2. It's Preston's last go. There's so much there that Sask is going to have to battle through. But that's a gritty team, so I'm looking forward to it. Moving down the bracket on that same side, Trinity Western is going to be taking on Montreal. This is not the normal Trinity Western that we're used to seeing. Of course, it's the first year without Coach Ben Josephson. We don't need to get into that whole debacle. Has Volleyball Canada screwed the pooch on that one. But still, this is still a very, very talented team with the Elser brothers, with Brody Hofer. What do you think about Trinity Western this season?
I think the good thing is they're healthy again. Towards the end of the season, Hofer wasn't 100%, or he was injured for a good portion of the second half. He looked very good against Alberta. At the same time, this is something that this team is built for, to get to this level. And with the experience they've got in that lineup, they're going to be a difficult matchup no matter how you look at it. The question will be is if all the seniors kind of shine through the way that they should, given the experience that they bring to the table.
Yeah. Absolutely. They're going to be in tough against Montreal, the number 2 team out of the RSEQ. I don't think that there's any. Actually, no offense to U of T, I forgot to watch that program. I commentated that bronze medal match, but I don't know if they stand a prayer against Alberta in that first round. That Alberta team is looking real good. I know they lost Braden Friesen. He went off to play pro in Kosovo, but still, I think Canham is absolutely phenomenal on the right side, and that's just a well-coached, well-oiled machine up there in Edmonton.
Yeah, no disagreement on that at all.
They're going to be tough. At this point, I think my favorite to win this championship is 100% Alberta. Someone's truly going to have to knock them off. Although, nothing against Windsor. I'm very interested to see the Sherbrooke program. Last year, they kind of flew under the radar. No one expected to win the RCQ. They did. No one expected them to be in a medal match. They ended up picking up the bronze. I'm excited to see a potential Sherbrooke versus Alberta matchup, because Sherbrooke is a very defensive-minded team with some great outside pins. And I think that's just going to be a battle. I would not be surprised to see that one go 5.
I agree. I think, you said it, I think in your podcast too, that, the Quebec teams are very scrappy. They're some of the scrappier teams, and they play with an energy that is made for a semifinal match to be the underdog. So if they get that opportunity, I think that'll be a game or a match that Alberta could really be pushed for sure. And, to go back to what you were talking about with Trinity Western, I think this is the first round matchup they've had in a few years that could be a lot tighter than they've been used to as well, where they've kind of coasted in that first round, being a really high seed and just being a very dominant presence going in.
Yeah, I remember, what was it, like 2016 when they had to play Ryerson. Ryerson scared them a little bit. I remember Benjo. I was back when Lucas Coleman was playing for them. And then you'd have to go back to like 2013, sorry, when 2014 when they lost to Western and Sean McKay in Calgary, since when they had like a really tough, it wasn't necessarily tough on paper. OG fans of the show remember Pierre Rock calling that one a 3-bagel. And then as we were doing our post-day wrap-up, a few of the boys, Luke Sim, going by and calling him out with the 3-bagel. So that was a classic moment. But you're right. I think that first roundup matchup between Trinity Western Montreal is going to be fantastic. All right, let's jump over the women quickly before you got to go, and then I'm going to go back and do everything else. Trinity Western, they take home the number 1 seed. They win the Canada West yet again. Well deserved.
I think so. Yeah, it was well deserved. They were definitely the top team all year. I kind of expected the final when they played Mount Royal to be a little bit closer. That was the only thing that was maybe a bit of a surprise, that they won as easily as they did. But, it's kind of a different breakdown now, the way the Canada West is doing the playoffs, where like it was a single match Mount Royal traveled for one match at Trinity to play, whereas before it used to be like the Final Four. You were there for 2 days. You'd play your semi and then you'd play your final all at the same time. So just a bit of a different setup. And I mean, Trinity brings quite a rowdy crowd, and I'm not surprised that the home court advantage was a big part of that. So I think top to bottom, Trinity's got the most depth. They run more of a balanced attack, a lot more than some of the other teams do, I find. They've kind of got weapons in each of those positions, and their setter does a really good job to mix the ball around. So,
all right. Well, I'm excited to see it. As we know, the Langley Event Center, not an easy place to play, especially in a championship match. Those Spartan faithful, they get behind their team, and it's a lot of fun. I really want to talk about, did you get to see UBC play this year?
I did get a chance to see them, and I know that towards the end of the season they were pretty banged up. So I think it's going to be a very tough first round matchup for them. But at the same time, if they're healthy, if the home crowd gives them some bit of energy, I want to say that definitely will give them a bit of an edge and will help them out. But they're playing a Brock team, like you were mentioning before, had a pretty unbelievable comeback to win the OUA. So they're going to be riding on a high and got to be excited to be playing the host team in this tournament. But definitely not an easy matchup, and I guarantee you Brock knows that as well.
No, yeah, absolutely. I definitely think Brock knows that. And I mean, let's be honest, on the women's side, it's a little bit different. I think there's a little bit more belief amongst the OUA teams, as we've seen U of T win a championship. We've seen Ryerson win a championship like in the past decade. So they're a little bit more competitive on that side. Not saying that, McMaster and Windsor and U of T. Well, I mean, sorry, U of T. Maybe not this time around. Unfortunately, especially with Alberta in the first round. But I'm not entirely sure that in the past. We've never seen. Not that we've never seen. It's been a long time since we've seen. An OUA team win a championship, whereas we've seen that on the women's side. So you're right, but having to get through a tough UBC team at home, we know that like Reimer's been there how many times before. He's the winningest coach in CIS uSports women's volleyball history in terms of championships, right? So it's going to be, I think that one is going to be a really good match. That I think is it the 8:00 match or is it the 6:00 match there?
Let me double check. It is the 6:00 match. So I think honestly the first set is going to tell you everything in that one. If UBC comes out hot, it's going to be tough for Brock to respond, I think. But at the same time, if UBC comes out a little bit flat, they haven't played in a few weeks either. So I wouldn't expect them to be great in that opening set, which could pose a bit of a problem. But again, it's going to really depend on what that crowd does for them, because it could be packed, and most UBC athletes that have played in that gym haven't played a volleyball game with a packed War Memorial gym. So that could be a unique experience.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, do remember that Brock did pull off that reverse sweep in the OUA final for the Quigley Cup. They were down 0-2 to Queens, and they were able to pull it all the way back. So, I think that one's going to be a really, really good matchup. I don't know if I'll get a chance to watch it with everything going on at the men's championship, but maybe I'll watch it on Volleymetrics or something after the fact as I'm recovering next week.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, on that same bracket, if you look at Mount Royal, Manitoba, that's maybe the most intriguing one for me, given the fact that it's the only of the two tournaments, it's the only matchup that ended up having a conference battle, and it's a tough one for Mount Royal because they beat Manitoba like 4 times this year already. They beat them both times in playoffs. They beat them both times in the regular season, and now they have to beat them again. So Manitoba's got to be feeling pretty good, given the fact that all they have to do is beat them once. That age-old saying, you just got to beat them one time, and they could end up in a semifinal match. But Mount Royal is no pushover. They've been by far the second best team in the Canada West this year.
And especially too for Manitoba, because I feel like when you're coming in like the 8th seed like that, there's not a lot of pressure on you. You know, you're just coming in and you just got to play. Whereas for Mount Royal, this is a program that's been looking to break through and to settle themselves amongst the elite of the Canada West for some time now. And, you know, they've been getting inching closer and closer, and they've been heartbroken a few times. I do believe this is the last year for Toli Tokboom.
I believe so.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
that's
And their setter too. I believe their setter, and I think even their right side. They've got a few that are graduating, so it's a significant turnaround that's going to happen. I believe some of this same group was part of the COVID year, where like they qualified, they got into nationals, and then they didn't happen.
yeah.
So I think for some of them, this is a big deal, and this is a huge opportunity to be able to have this. So I think they're going to be there. That's going to be a very difficult matchup for both those teams, but I think Mount Royal is probably going to be the team to take it there. But I mean, the fact that it's a Canada West matchup is going to be a battle.
Yeah, you've got Quinn Pelland is a fifth year. Their setter. You've got Haley Rowe on the outside, who's a fifth year as well. Madison Marshall on the outside, who's a fifth year, and a bunch of fourth years as well. Tholi Tokboom is a fourth year, so technically she could come back.
Okay,
I'm not.
It's one of those years, right, where you don't know either because of COVID and how many players are actually still going to be in school. Like next year could be a really weird year for a ton of turnover for all of these teams.
Yeah, and especially for Tokboom, like she's someone who's got national team potential and professional potential, right? Especially since we just saw Avery Allard sign in the women's Serie A in Italy. That's pretty awesome. I don't know if I've ever seen a Canadian woman go straight to the best league in the world. So that's a huge thing. So a talent like Tokboom, she's 6'3". She's a fantastic middle blocker with national team potential. She could definitely go play pro next season.
Yeah, it's definitely something that seems to be happening more and more, both on the guys and the women's side. But I mean, it's good for our country. It's good for the progress of what our national teams want to be able to do. So, I hope the right opportunity comes along for a lot of them, and we see that progress and show in the national team.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with how well the women have been playing right now. I mean, a few years ago, if you had told me that the women would be doing better than the men on the international stage, I would have laughed in your face. But that's undoubtedly the case right now, and women's volleyball in Canada is alive and well, especially when you see the talent coming out of uSports specifically. We've had the Sarah Pavins, even Alexa Gray, she comes out of the NCAA. Jen Cross is the NCAA. Shayna Joseph here, but Kara Van Ryk, uSports athlete. Avery Allard, uSports athlete. Bree King, uSports athlete, and the list goes on. Hillary Howe as well. So it's great for these uSports athletes to be getting that international exposure, and it's just going to provide more and more opportunities for our uSports athletes to go pro.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to make for a great tournament this weekend on both sides. So. I'm pretty excited to see how it's going to break down, even if I'm only watching it from home and seeing it on the screen. But, this is kind of the cream of the crop at what, volleyball in Canada is waiting for in March. Like you mentioned, March Madness for the volleyball side of it. And it's also pretty unique opportunity to see the fact that UBC is hosting after all this time, after being, so dominant for so many years. To see them have a chance to host in their gym is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be awesome. It's too bad it didn't happen in past years when they were maybe a little bit stronger, but glad it's happening now. All right, are you already late for practice?
Maybe. I just got to walk downstairs though.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's all good.
If you got to go, you got to go.
Well, I'll just say thanks for having me, and look forward to seeing the coverage that you're going to bring this weekend, and see the battles that are going to happen. So
yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's too bad I didn't get to hear any of your broadcast from VIU. I was hearing some good things though.
I appreciate it.
Better things than I was hearing about the Humber broadcast. Let's just say that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Apparently we're using umpires now in volleyball. So,
Oh boy.
yeah, that was interesting. I mean, hey, I offered my services and I got nothing back. So it is what it is, but I'm glad that you were able to do it out on the West Coast and glad to hear it. And once again, thanks so much for taking the time to come chat with me today.
Thanks, buddy. We'll
Awesome.
talk soon.
Enjoy your practice.
I will.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
All right. We're just going to continue on. We're going to probably just jump back to the women's side now. To the men's side now, and break things down a little bit. Actually, no. You know what? Let's just stick it right here with the women. Go through this bracket a little bit. Obviously, the one matchup we didn't talk about yet is Dalhousie against UQAM. Let me just pull up the schedule here, or for the uSports National Championships. Dalhousie against UQAM. Big shout out to UQAM for winning their first ever RSEQ title, and they kind of swept all the big awards. Sabrina Meyer was the athlète par excellence, the player of the year for the UQAM. Annika Pignot was the recrue de l'année, so the rookie of the year, and then Claude Tremblay, entraîneur de l'année, coach of the year for the RSEQ. And I mean, I said it in my last podcast. I do think that the RSEQ might be the most competitive. I know it's a smaller program or conference, but top to bottom, it's probably the most competitive. And UQAM is a team that I don't even think they've been in there for a decade. So the fact that they're winning championships now, on top of the typical powerhouses like the Lavals and the Montreals, that's absolutely massive. And McGill, of course, McGill taking down that second spot. They took down their crosstown rivals Montreal in the semifinals. In an awesome three match series to get get to qualify for nationals. So big ups to them. Also, they're in tough in round one against Trinity Western. That match is going to be the second match of the day, the 3 p.m. match, Pacific time. Over in BC. Admittedly, do not know much about Dalhousie's team this year. Obviously, they won the AUS as they usually do, but I do expect UQAM to pull this one off. We typically see the RCQ teams do very well at the national championships. So I'm just going to pull up the AUS schedule and results here. Oh, playoffs, not regular season. So yeah, Dalhousie. Oh wow, that must have been a series. I'm actually kind of upset I didn't watch that. Dalhousie went to the limit in a best of 3 series, all 3 games going to 5. Acadia taking the first 3-2, and then Dalhousie taking the second and third matches at home 3-2. So big ups to Dalhousie for winning the AUS. They have to take on UQAM in the in the first round. Dalhousie has not lost an AUS title since back in 2012. 2011, 2012 was the last time Dalhousie did not win. Lucy Glenn Carter was the player of the year this year for Dalhousie. So it's going to be interesting as they take on UQAM in the first round. That's one that maybe I'll see if I can check out. Hopefully it falls. Oh no, that's at 6:00 match. So that's right at that McMaster match time. So we'll see how that goes. Then we move on to down that schedule. Brock versus UBC. We talked about it, man. That's going to be a great matchup, I think. It's going to be interesting to see Brock, as the only OUA team this year, try to fight for the OUA. As I talked about it in my last podcast, I do believe they beat Trinity Western in some exhibition games earlier this year. So massive for them to have had that experience. And, I would love to see that East versus West showdown. But that being said, with Trinity Western and, the winner of the, Trinity Western is going to be on the same side as that winner of the UQAM versus Dalhousie match. That semifinal could be an interesting one as well. Yeah, but I do expect Trinity Western potentially versus Brock. Although, man, Mount Royal, that's a team that has really been knocking on this doorstep. As Kyle said, they have a veteran team, so we'll see how it goes. All right, let's jump back to the men now, just to break things down a little bit. As I said, of course, I'll be there all tournament long for the men. I really think that, we talked about that McMaster versus Sherbrooke match being great. I really think, McMaster versus Saskatchewan match, another S team. But I really think the Sherbrooke versus Windsor team is going to be good. This Sherbrooke team, man, is really good. When you look at, they led the RCQ in hitting percentage. They led it in assists. They led it in kills. They led it in blocks. They were second in service aces. They were averaging almost 9 digs a set. So I think that this Sherbrooke team is going to be tough. I mean, hell, you had 2 guys on Sherbrooke leading in hitting percentage. Julien Vanier, over 500. Elliot Collard, over 400. So those are over some massive numbers. No, Johan David was averaging almost 4 kills a set, right? But then you look how many other Sherbrooke athletes were, high up there on kills too. But I really think what it comes down to and why this team is so good is the ability for setter Jonathan Portalance to really spread that offense. He does such a good job at utilizing everyone. I mean, his dad is a longtime coach in the province of Quebec as well. So I think, we've seen that time and time again, especially in Canadian volleyball, where those volleyball kids just grow up and they know the game so well. And I think exactly that's what's been happening from this Sherbrooke team. Everything I've watched, and I think webcasts are somewhat deceiving, but I love how even and evenly spread and just high-powered that this Sherbrooke offense is. And as I talked about on the CCAA side, anytime you have a Quebec team, they're going to go hard. They're going to play hard defense. They're going to serve bombs from the baseline. Portalance, as we talked about, with 55 service aces this year, averaging 0.4 a set. So that's nothing to sneeze at. If you look at the other side there, the Montreal versus a Trinity Western matchup, I think their setter, Maxime Saint-Denis, maybe not as flashy as Portalance, but man, this kid has a workman's approach to volleyball. He's someone I know well. I mean, hell, I've seen Max play volleyball since he was like under 10 years old, as I was coached with his father, Frank Saint-Denis, with the Mavericks Volleyball Club. So I think both of the RSEQ teams have good matchups. I'm really excited for that Montreal versus Trinity matchup. Because I think the RCQ plays a different style that the Canada West and the OUA can't necessarily handle. When we're going back to that Sherbrooke versus Windsor match, though, I'm really looking forward to see Windsor. I haven't seen Windsor play at all this year, so I'm gonna hesitate. I'm gonna hold back from saying anything that much about them. However, I will say a few things. One, I respect the hell out of James Gravel and the program that he's built there. We saw Windsor qualify for nationals back in 2018. They gave Trinity a run for their money in the first round. We've seen some quality athletes come from that program. And I know that if any team is going to be prepared properly for Sherbrooke, it will be Windsor. And I know they're ready for the possibility. And if one team is going to be hopefully upset, I would call it an upset. If Windsor were to beat Sherbrooke, I would call it an upset. to be quite honest, I think the only reason Sherbrooke was ranked 4th was because you didn't want to have that conference versus conference matchup. You couldn't really have, you just didn't really want to have that conference versus conference matchup. I would rank, like in my book, Sherbrooke should be the number 2 ranked team this season. They've only lost one match all year. That was to Montreal earlier in the year. So, yeah, it will be an interesting one. All right, I think that will do it for me. I'm gonna go to the chat. No questions in the chat, but I'm tired. That's my second podcast today. I was coaching all day. Got to do it all again tomorrow. Make sure you check out Volleyball Source on Thursday. We're going to be at the Burge all day, interviewing some coaches and interviewing some athletes, and we will also be at the All-Canadian banquet for the Player of the Year award and ceremonies and Coach of the Year, and see who the first team All-Stars and everything like that. And then the action kicks off on Friday. I'll have those first 2 matches on the men's side, so I'll be calling the Toronto versus Alberta matchup and then the Windsor versus Sherbrooke matchup on Friday morning. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Big shout out to Kyle Donnan for coming in to chat about some CCAA and giving us a bit of a preview on the Canada West. And make sure you guys check it out all week long. Thanks. Peace.